Hey guys, welcome to the all-new The Island Renaissance podcast. Excited to be back. With me here today is Varuni Fernando. She is a counselor. She is the founder of the Wellness Center. The research that I did on Varuni revealed that in 2003, Varuni, you were in the garment industry, and then you took a fancy and a liking towards psychology, but with more specificity, psychoanalysis and what you call dynamic psychology and psychotherapy, right? So we'll take a deep dive into what each of these things are for people who know or don't know. So 23 years now, I think. Yeah? You've been a counselor and you've been a psychologist. So the first time I got to know about you was when my spouse, Jessica, was taking classes from you. If I'm not mistaken, I think she did the certificate in counseling and psychology. Mm-hmm. And then you had your sessions online. And I remember this used to coincide because I was reading I think at the time I was reading for my MSc. It was after my MBA and CIM. And so we used to take turns with whoever, had the laptop and whoever had the classes and stuff online. And I remember with the lessons going on, I used to sometimes make sure that I didn't make too much noise, and I used to just saunter around very, very silently, but I could hear the topics and the conversations. And I remember telling Jess that I need to have a chat with this Varuni lady because I think it'll be absolutely enlightening and fascinating. And so here we are. Thank you for taking time off, your busy and hectic schedule to be here with me today. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
So if we can start off, Varuni, by you explaining, maybe not in a very complex and complicating way, but for people out there who have constantly heard the terms psychology, they've heard psychiatry, they've heard counseling, then we've, especially in recent years, with the advent of social media and with the rise of thought leadership and thought leaders, guys like Professor Jordan Peterson, Professor Andrew Huberman, and other psychoanalysts who have grown popular in the psychology sphere. So we've heard these terms, psychoanalysis. Then while doing reading up on you, I came across this thing of dynamic psychology. Is dynamic psychology, is it? Psychodynamic psychotherapy. So would you be kind enough to explain what each of these things are and how they're different from each other?
Right. So I'll just, in the introduction, I just wanted to clarify that 2003 was when I first started volunteering. So I wasn't a full-time counselor for all those years. I was still working, and then I started my full-time counseling only in 2018. So just to clarify that, because I was in the corporate sector, garment industry mostly, and that's been my thing for most of my life right now.
What were you doing in the...
Started off as a banking assistant as soon as I left school, and then transitioned to the garment industry, and that's where I was for a long time, having my own workshop making garments. So it was an interesting phase, but at the same time I started volunteering as a counselor in 2003. That is when I started teaching myself psychology. So I'm mostly self-taught at that time. I was never had the time to look for classes or follow any kind of program to get a proper qualification or anything like that. But eventually I have done that. Got myself a couple of diplomas and a degree and whatnot. But that's how it was. But to come back to your question about clarifying these terms, psychiatry, psychology, psychotherapy, lots of different terms. It's a good thing that we are talking about that, because in Sri Lanka, when something goes wrong, we have that instinct, okay, let's go to the doctor. And in this case, the doctor is the psychiatrist. So a psychiatrist that's a profession where, we have to go through medical college, do the whole process, become a doctor. And a psychiatrist is the only doctor in this country where you can get medication prescribed. Only a psychiatrist can do that. Not counselors, not psychotherapists, and not psychologists. So a medical doctor can prescribe medication for any kind of mental health issues.
So shrink is, pardon the term, a shrink is a psychiatrist.
Well, that's a little difficult to say, because that used to be the case a long time ago when psychologists weren't around as much.
Okay.
Then psychiatrists did the psychologist job also. This was a long time ago. But I suppose nowadays, let's say in Sri Lankan context, since we are here, the psychiatrists, I doubt whether they take on the psychologist's role as much. One thing is, there is that time spent with the patient is very limited. So you really can't do the shrinking. So there is a lot of patients to be seen, and they have to do a specific job, mostly diagnosis and trying to do that doctor's job. But psychologists, on the other hand, that profession has grown even in Sri Lanka. So psychologists and psychotherapists, they spend more time with the patient or the client. So we talk about what's happening and get to psychological roots of what's causing the problem. So when now that is psychiatrist, and when it comes to psychologist, a psychologist is also, I do suppose in Sri Lanka also it's a protected term. I can't call myself a psychologist, for example, because to become a psychologist in this country, I think there is a pathway. You have to do a BSc, a master's, and 𝗵𝗲, which is there. I think Colombo University offers that. At that point, you can register yourself with the medical board in this country, and then you are a psychologist. That's when you can call yourself a psychologist. That's just one pathway that I know of, but I'm not sure whether there is another pathway to become a psychologist. But I know that having a master's in clinical psychology might not be the place where you can call yourself a psychologist in Sri Lanka. We have to check on that. I'm not too sure.
So is this different in other parts of the global south?
Oh, yes. Different countries have different things. Like I do believe, like in Germany, you have to have a master's and then you can be called a psychologist. If I'm not mistaken, that's something that I've heard recently.
Is there a reason why the standards and benchmarks are different?
Could be, but also it depends on the content that is taught in these different levels. Maybe in the US, I think you have to have a PhD to be called a psychologist. So in Europe, maybe things are different. So it could be the content, which I'm not too sure why, but not every country follows the same rule. That much I know. So in Sri Lanka, I think to be called a psychologist, you have to have that 𝗵𝗲 at least, or a PhD.
Okay, so wait, if I sort of got this right, a psychologist is someone who specializes in the philosophy of psych, who can contribute more knowledge to the academic and professional sphere, whereas a psychiatrist is someone who can one-on-one treat patients.
Different types of treatment. Both offer different types of treatment.
Okay.
A psychiatrist treats a person with any mental health issues in one way.
But you said psychiatrists can give meds, right?
Yes. So that's...
Psychologists can't?
Can't.
Okay.
As far as I know, they can't.
Okay.
So if medication needs to be prescribed, you have to refer them to a psychiatrist. Right? So... And then comes a psychotherapist or a counselor. I think these two terms could be used interchangeably in Sri Lanka, at least. So that is where I am, where, counseling or psychotherapy is what I do. So what I may not have, the difference between a counselor and a psychologist is a psychologist has more training in more research base because they go through that whole process. I haven't. So to become a counselor, to have, I think there is no set requirement by the government. This is how you can be called a counselor, because counselor is not a protected term in Sri Lanka at the moment. So, for example, if you're in a church, you can, the elders of the church can be called counselors.
Or like
Right.
what we have in schools, right,
Right.
in Sri Lanka.
Yes. Now schools are starting to recruit.
Where either the chaplain or, back
yes.
in the day, it was either the chaplain or
Right.
maybe a
Right.
teacher who was involved a little bit more hands-on with the students and knew the students a little bit more on a intimate, personal level,
Right.
who were the counselors, who maybe would understand their problems. But
Yes.
like you're saying, now I think it's a
It's
bit
starting
more
to change now in schools. Schools are recruiting
professional
counselors so that, they offer maybe a more professional service to the students. So I know lots of schools in Colombo, they have their own counselors in school now. So which is really a good
So these are
good
people
way.
quintessentially who've done either diplomas or
in
degrees
counseling.
in child psychology who are in schools.
Yes. Diplomas in child psychology, and they could be having a BSc in counseling and psychology. That's how counselors are getting on with their work. So at least I think you need to have a diploma in counseling and psychology for you to be able to get on with that. But these are all, we are talking about credentials, but credentials don't really mean that you are ready to do this job. In my opinion, you need to actually have many, many hundreds of hours of talking to people, volunteering, and getting a feel for this before you actually set off as a counselor or a psychotherapist, because there's so much to learn. Even at this point in time, I'm still learning, enrolled in schools that are teaching more and more, psychodynamic theory or psychoanalysis, because that is my thing. So there is much to learn. So it is up to the psychotherapist to keep on learning, because there's so much of theories that can be very helpful, and it cannot possibly be taught within a 3-year program or a 4-year program.
I saw a recent video by a neuroscientist who was saying, based on published findings in the last few years, that it has now been brought to surface that human beings, we do not understand the human brain and the psyche nearly as much as we thought we even did. So they say that maybe the ratio has come up to that we don't even understand 80 to 85% of the human brain and the complexities therein. So it's interesting what you say, because obviously subjectively it varies, right, from person to person. So like you said, if a individual doesn't clock in the hours, and if you don't really, if you don't really interact and engage with people one-on-one, and the knowledge, what I'm trying to say is, the knowledge aspect of it is just one constituent and component,
Yes.
right? The individual itself has to have empathy and sympathy and a certain degree of emotional intelligence maybe, and
And a love for people.
a love for people.
Right.
Yeah,
You,
so
you,
there
you've got to love being with people, and, to have a certain knowledge of yourself. That is why all counselors and psychotherapists and psychologists should be having their own therapy, which is one of the key components of this whole journey, is that unless we get into therapy ourselves, we won't understand how a person who's sitting in front of us, what they're going through. I mean, it's not easy for someone to come to a total stranger and start talking about their life. So that empathy that we build up or that we have, it actually comes from a certain very real knowledge that you've been through this. You know what it's like to sit in front of somebody and talk about your life. So one of the components, this is one of the things that I'm thinking is kind of missing in our training, is that the requirement for psychology students to get into their own therapy. It's therapy is not just because you have some mental illness. It is a self-awareness, and learning as much as you can about your unconscious drives. So it's really important that we go through our own therapy and understand ourselves better, and get that experience of what it's like to sit in front of somebody and talk about this, because that's when we can relate better to someone who's coming to us for the first time. They're in your office or whatever space and sitting down there, and they don't know what to say and how to say it, and how are you going to encourage them to talk about it? And it's okay, this is a safe place for you to just open up, and it's confidential, but it has to come from a genuine place.
Because the other person can sense whether it's authentic or not, right?
Exactly.
And also the ability to listen.
Yes. One of the first
important.
skills that are taught in counseling programs is your listening skills.
Yeah, because I don't know whether they're just self-proclaimed counselors, but I come across a lot of people who say that they're either into counseling or, not really psychiatry or psychology. I've met some of those cases also, which whenever I've crossed paths with them, they also came across as a little bit dodge to me. Okay. But without going too much into that, some of these people that I meet who profess to be counselors, they've always rubbed me the wrong way, because one thing I've noticed is how much they like to talk. And sometimes you meet them for the first time, and even to sort of develop a first impression of that person, they spend copious effort and time just talking and talking and talking. And that I've kind of subliminally and silently just thought to myself, how the hell can this person, could someone else go to them and spill their entire their personal stories, like all these dark aspects of their life, disturbing aspects of their life, when this individual doesn't even have the proclivity to or decency to keep a little bit quiet and to listen to what I have to say. So I found that, I don't know whether it's because, whether even you have noticed this being in practice now for 23 years, that it's becoming more trendy for people to just hop onto this, where they're not necessarily sincere and genuine, or where how do you see this sort of playing out? Because obviously there are a lot more people now who, unlike when you started off, and maybe others during that time, the early 2000s, where you didn't have so much of access to getting the qualifications, academic or professional, or learning about it or reading about it. These days, anyone can find a course or a diploma or something online. They just do this crash course for 6 months or a year, and then they go around saying, I'm not just throwing shade at counselors and people in the psychology spectrum, people in marketing and business administration and management. I mean, as the story goes, you can throw a stone now, someone will probably have an MBA. Right. And they'll say it's from some university somewhere, right? I mean, not only does the course itself and the qualification and those letters start to lose value for what they represent and what they stand for, but is it a problem that you have personally experienced and felt in your respective this industry, that there's a saturation and a massive clutter of a lot more people getting qualified, but they are not necessarily cut, as proper listeners and people with empathy, or as you pointed out earlier, I think that was the best line, to have a love for people. Is this something that you see, that there are more and more people just jumping on this as a trend, or?
Well, I'm not sure whether they're getting into it because it's trendy. I think I see a lot of women get into learning counseling and psychotherapy. There's proportionally, yes, there's more women than men. I do have this belief that a lot of women also think, okay, this is something they can do from home. Yes, and from home, it serves them well, like, when you are married and having kids, and this is something that you can quietly learn and keep learning, and then also do what my friends have always told me, I'm a good listener, and so they kind of get this idea, okay, this is something that I can try out. There's nothing wrong with that. So we do see quite a number of women students are proportionally higher women, so they do get into it. But that point you made, do they have the skill of doing this? I think there is not much importance given to the true training of a psychotherapist. That part, I do believe, is maybe missing, and there's a lot of room for improvement.
You mean like practicals?
Yeah.
The one-on-one approach?
Even in schools that's teaching this, the depth of psychotherapy, the truly getting into it, I'm not sure whether that's being taught, but I do know that a lot of theory is being taught, but the application of it, how do you apply these theories into practical situations, and do we have enough case studies, that kind of thing, probably there could be a lot of room for improvement in that area. So
this is a global problem, or this is, you find
in Sri Lanka. I'm thinking more locally, because this is what I'm coming across with a lot of students who sometimes call up and ask whether they can do an internship with me. When I've probably spoken to hundreds of them by now, and it seems like the training, what they're missing is the application of theories. So they have the book knowledge, but it's difficult for them to see. One of the things that's holding them back is that they lack their own therapy. They don't really understand how this is going to go. So that is why I'm thinking, one of the most important things for a student in psychology or psychotherapy is to get into their own therapy and see what it's like. and explore, get curious about yourself before you become curious about other people, So getting that curiosity and what's driving me and why am I trying to be a counselor, these are important things, because without that, we are getting into a profession with so much of baggage that we can't help but project that onto our clients. So that's why we see lots of maybe counselors, psychotherapists, they keep giving advice, even though counseling is never about giving advice. People don't pay us to get advice. You can go to now ChatGPT and get all the advice you want, right? You really don't need to pay a counselor for that. You don't have to pay a counselor to tell you, go for a walk, go to the gym,
eat right.
Eat right.
Sleep right. Yeah.
Right. Why would you need a counselor to tell you that? Why would you even pay for a counselor to tell you these things? It's really not necessary. But why we do that is what you're actually looking for in a counselor is try to get what is causing you this thing, what's the cause of the situation where you actually have to go to the gym, where you have to go for a walk. These are things that you do, but what's causing that? Now, it's that cause that we have to address. So sometimes we don't maybe have the training to go to that cause.
To self-analyze, right? So it's interesting you speaking about the self-therapeutic journey. So I actually in my book, Stigmatized Lessons from My Storms, that I released late last year, I touch upon me being in some pretty dark periods of my life. And I've actually likened it to Nietzsche's abyss, of how I was actually so deep down in the abyss that I was actually, I joke about it in the book that I was actually making out with the abyss right at the bottom. That's how much I'd hit rock bottom. But I had to first forgive myself, and I had to heal in order for me to find any kind of therapy to self-realize and self-actualize how to improve myself. So the first step for me, and this wasn't me having necessarily done any courses or learned anything, and this was the time period during COVID that this happened, right? It was just me alone with a lot of rescues, there's no one else. And I call that my proper Robinson Crusoe period, where yes, I look like this. I looked a lot worse during COVID. The hair all tangled up, beard, and no substances, no alcohol, nothing. So I was going through a withdrawal phase also then. And I just started doing an MBA, and it was a really dark and abysmal period. But for my fortune, I did come across Viktor Frankl and Carl Jung, and I was able to come across Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, and some of the old Stoics, their teachings. And then I began to figure out, okay, being this miserable is not good for anyone. I have one of two choices. Either I end it now, which I came very close to doing, or I fight on and I just keep going. So to fight on and keep going, I had to do a lot of self-assessment, and I needed to first develop self-awareness. And that was hard, because I think I had become jaded for the longest time. For better or for worse, I've been in the public eye from the time I was 14, 15 years old with stigmata, right? So it was always very easy for me to not have to take responsibility for my own thoughts, my words, and my actions. It was very easy for me to just be intoxicated all the time, and to, develop bad habits, and to screw around with women, and to do a lot of that stuff. But once the self-awareness aspect came in, and that was the hardest when you're at rock bottom, to kind of realize, listen, it's not a question of whether you're a good person or a bad person. You're feeling pretty shit now. That's your own doing. And only you can help yourself. Until you help yourself, you can't help anyone else. So the reason I'm sharing that small thing with you is, I think as human beings, we all have the proclivity and the capacity to reach that touch point where we can become self-aware. But like you said, it's harder for some than others. Some develop thicker skin, and some people's life experiences maybe condition them and make them a lot harder, and they can weather and endure a lot more. Others, maybe not as much. So what would your thoughts be to say for someone who needs to reach that first touch point along the journey of self-awareness or self-identity, developing the therapeutic journey? Not necessarily whether they choose or not to become a counselor or psychologist or go into to become a psychoanalyst, but rather in general in life. What would you say? What are the telltale signs, or how can a person go about this?
Right. So, first of all, thank you for sharing that. So there's been a very interesting life that you've lived, and
Yeah.
I'm sure, it wouldn't have been easy. So the thing with us is we live life quite unconsciously. Most of us, we simply do what needs to be done and we get on with it. But in this living, we also repeat certain patterns. We build up certain habits, like you've just said. We go through certain emotional loops. Now, in this kind of living, we not only hurt ourselves, we hurt the people around us, right? The closest to us, they get hurt, upset. But we are living our life the way we know how, the way we think is best. We keep living. So at some point, if we come to a place where we feel like, the way we are getting on with this is not working out for me. I am unable to hold on to a romantic relationship. I'm upsetting my parents all the time, or I can't have a relationship with my siblings, or I can't make meaningful friendships. At some point, if you come to that realization, that is a point where some of us might think of getting into therapy, because like I said, therapy is not just for, someone with a mental illness.
So the Island Renaissance podcast would not be a reality or a possibility if not for the following entities and their generosity. Skin Family Wellness, thank you for the partnership and sponsorship. 𝗁𝗏 360 for all the technical expertise with the videoing and the photography. 𝗵𝗲 and 𝗵𝗲 Institute, thank you for availing and providing us with this amazing space to shoot the new pods. And then Evil Cat Lab, the post-production lab and studio that will be handling all the edits for TIR. So thank you guys from the bottom of my soul. Thank you. Cheers.
It's for everyone who wants to get out of that unconscious living. Right. So, at the there is a Greek myth,
Sisyphus.
Oedipus Rex.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that is Sophocles wrote that about 500 years BC, I think, long time ago. So there is this story about the guy going into the oracle of at Delphi, yes, and there is an inscription, "Know thyself," right? So what it would mean is that whatever the oracle is going to tell you, you're sure to misinterpret that if you don't know yourself.
Okay.
Right. So knowing ourselves, this is the kind of the crux or the central point of psychoanalysis. Know yourself. And it is that journey that if we manage to bring out what's in our unconscious, what's driving us, how we have been conditioned, then we are able to live more freely, making better decisions for ourselves. And we actually can recognize, oh, this is what I've been doing all my life. I don't have to keep doing that. It's time to change these patterns.
Unless a person is a narcissist and
right,
in that particular case, they choose to continue with that pattern because they can harm people.
Yes, someone who is having a narcissistic personality disorder, which is that end of that spectrum where, you're in it and you're not going to see there's anything wrong with you. Right? So there is no contemplation of anything. It is not possible at that point. But narcissism exists in all of us. We all have some amount of narcissism, and it is a healthy thing to have some amount of narcissism.
But that is, you're talking, if we look at the story and the myth of Narcissus and him looking at the reflection in the pool, you're talking more of something like hubris, right? And pride that we should all have. To be narcissistic, like you said, to have the disorder, that's bordering on.
That's an extreme end of it, where a person at that end of the spectrum is probably not going to ever think that they need help or they need to change the way they are because everybody around them is miserable. They're not, probably they don't have
these are people who end up holding sometimes very prominent and important positions in the corporate sphere, right? Or even in family decision-making units.
Yes. So we do see spouses quite miserable, children quite miserable, but they don't really see it.
Anything wrong with it.
Yeah. So at that point of...
is it that they can't help it? They know...
No, they can't. I don't think
they don't feel that way, is it?
I don't think they have a capacity to understand it or to realize it. That is why a narcissistic person will not probably come into psychotherapy at all, because you don't know.
I don't need help, kind of.
Yeah. You don't really see anything wrong with yourself. Everything is wrong with everybody else, but not you. So that is a interesting disorder to, get into. But anyway,
I know. Sorry, it took a bit of a dark turn there. But I was wondering. So again, just to pique my curiosity here. So psychopath and a sociopath, are they both narcissists?
Oh, these are different things.
But they both have to maybe contain elements of narcissism to...
Yeah, of course, yes. Elements of it.
Again,
right?
They're not conditioned to be that. They're born like that, right?
That I can't say for sure. I'm not very knowledgeable on how it happens.
But it can be through conditioning also, no?
Possibly,
trauma,
but I do think that psychopathic conditions are sometimes you're probably born with that.
Okay.
But I have to tell you, I don't have much knowledge on how it gets started up. So psychopath, sociopath, narcissist are three different things, very differently identified. But narcissistic traits are throughout, each one of us, we have to some degree or the other. Right. So, yeah. So when it comes to getting into therapy, or like in your life, you read certain books, like Viktor Frankl, what is it? The Man's Search for Meaning. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That changed my life.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. It is a fantastic story. It's wonderful. So that's the thing. When you are ready for that change, you get yourself into reading this stuff, and then some of us have that capacity to understand through other people's experiences. Right.
Actually, even like one of the life-changing books for me was Crime and Punishment.
Okay.
𝗺dostoyevsky. That I know a lot of people find the Russian authors to be quite, brutal. Like, it's not light reading for one thing.
It is not.
And it's not always hope at the end of the tunnel sort of stuff either. But if through the existential crises that those characters and the protagonists, what they endure and what they have, if you can get something out of it. So for me, Frankl's writing, then Aurelius, like I said, his meditations, all those things I think found me at maybe the right time. And maybe I found maybe little stanzas and excerpts and stuff. And later on, of course, I found all the books. I made sure that I found all the publications and I went through it properly in more detail. So it's interesting, Varuni, how awesome our conversation is, because that was still the first question of the whole pod. And then we ended up touching on a lot of other stuff as well. But okay, let me quickly touch upon some other important stuff. This is very important in a global South context, even more so in a Sri Lankan context. In Sri Lanka, so many people cling on to traditional and cultural beliefs, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it becomes a bad thing when you become very, very narrow-minded and you develop biases and certain prejudices, and you're not really open-minded or open-hearted to explore other avenues of discovery or understanding or knowledge or exploration and stuff like that. Like, I know a lot of families where they view people going for counseling or people going for therapy as something that is very taboo, to the point where I've heard it with my own ears of people like, they see it as like something where people who have some incurable disease, some social stigma or scar that has been that the gods have insinged upon them or branded them with, that they don't think about the individual and the individual's need, but they're more concerned about what their neighbors and relatives and friends and people around them think and feel about this. So one thing is, I'm sure it's there in other parts of the global South as well. I'm sure there are many parts in India, this is predominantly there, other parts of the region as well. But it's still here in Sri Lanka. So what I would like is to ask you, why counseling is so important? Why counseling or going and seeing, maybe after what you told me, maybe not a psychiatrist, no offense to psychiatrists, but counselors or psychologists or psychoanalysts. Why it's important, especially for young people in this day and age who seem to be getting more and more depressed, who seem to be embedded with so much more anxiety, so much more stress. Why it should be more integral that they go and talk to someone and they should reach out for help. We've seen the number of suicides and I'm not saying that it's exponentially increased, but every few years we hear about people taking their lives, and we see that it's not just because of relationship problems, but sometimes it's for many, many other reasons as well. So what are your thoughts on this?
So when I first started this, there was so much more stigma than now, obviously. So one of the positive things that I have seen, at least in Colombo, is that parents are taking the initiative to take their children to the therapist, calling up and asking, who's a good therapist? I need to take my son or my daughter. So these are good, these are really wonderful improvements, let's say, because people have done some sort of activism has been there to make everybody aware and to minimize the stigma. So at least in Colombo, we are seeing a change. I'm not sure about the rest of the country, but because I'm here, I can see there's a big difference compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago.
No, that's for sure.
Yes. So this is really good. But yet you're right, because now there's more depression, there's more anxiety. So a lot of young people are facing quite a lot more, I feel, than years before. It could be that years ago we didn't really detect it, or nobody was there to talk about it. So we really don't know whether it was as bad 20 years ago, or is something new happening to young people now for them to become so much more anxious now. But one of the things that's been found out is, of course, a causal connection between social media and anxiety.
I was about to say, especially the dopamine addiction, right?
Yes. So a lot of the time I was reading about how Meta was, or I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to say these companies' names in the podcast.
You can. That's fine. Just go for it.
So they have been talking about how this research, this data is correlational, but it is not. It's causal, and social media addiction causes high anxiety. So for those reasons, the US has taken steps to take away the phones of children, like up to 16. They can't bring their phones to school. So in schools you can't use your phone anymore, which is fantastic. That's a really big step forward. And unfortunately, because of COVID, we've had to introduce
remote learning and more tech-based education.
And that has really, we haven't taken steps to take that away. We needed that for a moment, but now it's time to take it away. So things like this have really added on to the, let's say, the mental health burden of our country, right? And the good thing is parents are more open to helping their kids, and parents are more open to figuring out what's wrong with them that their kids are behaving in such and such a manner. So they're also asking that question, which is also a good thing.
But I think you're maybe talking about younger parents, right?
Well, yes. Well, it's got to start somewhere.
That's true.
It's got to start somewhere. So parents are more keen to do better themselves, right? So which is a really good attitude to have. I hope it gets better from this moment.
Is that because also maybe that there's more education and data and information now?
Yes, for sure.
As opposed to the past, where this was a very sort of still very closed up, and people didn't quite understand the nuances of it.
Yes. So for example, let's say a child who's exhibiting, symptoms of ADHD. A few years ago, parent might take the child to the psychiatrist. Psychiatrist will give
Prescribe
them
some stuff.
Ritalin or whatever.
And they get hooked on that, right?
Yep. Yes. So the child is on this medication for a number of years, maybe, too many years. But now it's changing that parents might be more open to asking, what can I do at home to support my child?
Right.
Because, in Sri Lankan schools, we know what it's like. 35 kids, one exhausted teacher, and one kid can't take it.
That's
And,
true.
He's jumping around, he's disrupting the class. It's not such a, let's say, abnormal thing because you're putting in so many kids and one adult to bear it all. So definitely, things are going to go out of control.
This is why maybe I feel that most schools now, particularly the international schools, because I actually consult on business and strategy for a couple of schools here. The teacher-student ratio, they focus and emphasize on a lot more than, say, the local schools do. So they would never allow a situation like that where one teacher would come and exhaust themselves. It's not practical.
Yeah.
The classroom full of 30, 40 students, because you cannot give that kind of attention for that period of time to 40 odd students, right? Which also leads to other issues, because this is why local schools get criticized often, more often than not, that the teachers tend to favor certain groups of students and tends to neglect the rest, which also becomes a problem.
Yeah. Yes. Different problems. Yeah. So going back to, let's say, where we started about the stigma of it all and how, so from what I've seen, it's getting better. And I'm hoping that
more people are open now.
Yes, and that momentum, if we can keep it up, we can
What needs to be done, in your opinion, to make sure the momentum can be?
Well, I think we do have enough awareness.
But that's one good thing about social media, right?
Right.
Where thanks to that,
Yes.
I mean, there are plenty of flip sides to it, I agree.
Yes.
But I think like the few good things that do come out as a result of social media, stuff like this, where the awareness for stuff and the mass dissemination of knowledge on positive things is also there.
Yes. Also,
it's just that you can't filter it.
Right. You can't filter it. And of course, the flip side is that we have too much of information also, where we see people can diagnose themselves.
That is true.
Right. And that's not helpful. Because diagnosis is not ticking boxes. I have this, and this for 2 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever, and AI can spit out, looks like this is what you got. And that is not helpful, because unfortunately it's not how mental health or mental illness should be diagnosed. That is why the professionals, now I don't do diagnosis because I'm a counselor. A psychologist can do a diagnosis because they have gone through that training, identifying certain things, nuances, and they see the person and they can make that diagnosis. A psychiatrist can make the diagnosis. But in my profession as a counselor and psychotherapist, I truly believe that we shouldn't step into that arena. And definitely, having said that, I wouldn't suggest anyone to go to AI to get their diagnosis.
Yeah.
Because diagnosis is not ticking boxes. But that is unfortunately the idea many counseling students also get, because they are taught about the DSM. The DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. That is kind of the Bible for mental health. So in that, it's a massive publication. In that you get all the disorders.
Right.
And, the list of things, you need to look out for. And if you have 5 out of 7 or 10, whatever, okay, it could be this. I personally don't refer to that. One thing is because I don't do diagnosis, but also in my kind of the psychodynamic psychotherapy that I do, the diagnosis is not really the issue. It is seeing the person and saying, okay, if someone comes with something, they are washing their hands every 15 minutes. So instead of labeling them, it's OCD, a term that we are using now for
just
many
flippantly,
things.
right?
Yes. So my approach would be to see, this person is having some kind of anxiety. Where is that coming from? So I'm going to be directing my, the whole counseling process to kind of uncovering what's been going on, that this person is anxious about something. And once that is uncovered and treated in that process, we find, I'm not washing my hands every 15 minutes anymore. So it is like that. That's what psychotherapy is, that we don't have to label it and then take, okay, you do these things.
So the ticking of boxes, like you said, is where people have got so used to just treating symptoms,
right,
without paying attention to the actual cause.
Yes. So that is why we were talking about the flip side of having so much of awareness, is where people can just go to AI and see, okay, what's wrong with me? I have these things.
Right.
So that's when things become more troublesome for them, because now there's confusion. So awareness is good, it's happening, and more people are open to going to a counselor, sending their children to a counselor. People, I can see it very clearly. Parents are very much more open to that. That's wonderful. At the same time, the downside is that we try to diagnose ourselves and become extremely confused. And then by the time they get to a counselor, it's a longer journey.
Okay.
Right.
So Varuni, you mentioned earlier that the ratio of females are a lot more than male students who are taking up studying. But in your experience, when it comes to people who suffer anxiety or depression, is there a ratio? I don't know. I'm just going by maybe what I have read or whatever findings I've come across, that in modern society, more men seem to be more depressed than women are. Is that a truism? Or?
I can't tell you the statistic. I'm not very up to date on the statistic. But I can tell you that men as well as women get depressed, and women slightly more than men. But both, all of us, we go through a depressive phase at some point in our lives. We could. Some of us feel it more than others. And those who seek treatment, I can say, in my experience, have been more women than men.
Right.
So more women have sought treatment than men. So that much I know through my experience. It could be statistically true also, but I can't be sure of that.
Is it because perhaps that women tend to be more emotionally attuned to their feelings and
could be
the things around them than men are?
Could be. And they are also finding out that there could be help for them. Whereas
Where men are more hesitant to seek help?
Hesitant or don't prioritize it.
Right.
I'm not sure which one. But those two could be the main reasons. Hesitancy is one. Talking to a complete stranger and, talking about life and stuff, they might already have a preconceived notion of what is therapy, and that might not be a very positive one. So that might keep them from going to that complete stranger and talking about life, their lives. So that's could be one of the reasons. But for women, I think they are now more aware that they don't have to suffer through things, and they are reaching out more.
They're reaching out more.
Yeah.
Okay. So this has been really great chat. I've only been able to cover like half of the questions, but
Right.
also I think we have to be cognizant that, especially in this day and age, if we're going to have even if though it's a long form podcast, if it's going to be too long also, people are not going to really, really pay attention to the whole thing as well. So I think I need to get you once again at some point,
Right.
and then we can touch upon all the stuff that we had.
Would love to.
I've got
yes.
2 pages here of questions, but I think we covered a lot of really great ground. I wanted to talk about Sigmund Freud. I want to talk about Carl Jung. I wanted to talk about Friedrich Nietzsche as well, and so much of stuff. But maybe we'll keep that for a later point, another interview for sure. This also, then maybe it won't be an amalgamation of stuff that's going to be too much for people. But to finish off, what I thought I would ask you is, how can someone reach out to you if they need someone to listen to them or they need someone to talk to? So let's look at this as a series of questions. We'll do in one, then we can knock it out of the park. First off, for anyone who is interested to study and to be tutored by you, if they are interested to learn, to do the certificate or the diploma degree under you, counseling or psychology, how can they contact you? This is where you can do a plug-in for your website and how they can reach out to you. So maybe talk about that first.
Okay.
And then we can talk about how people can maybe, not as students, but they can reach out to you if they need help.
Yeah. Okay, so the first question is about the studying bit. I now just teach one thing, and that is psychodynamic psychotherapy for counselors who've had at least 5 years experience. So they have already gone through their diplomas, certificates, degrees if they wish to, but they have been in practice for about 5 years, and they have met people, they have talked to them, they have had clients, they have a lot of exposure to many patients or clients. If they are interested in learning about psychodynamic psychotherapy, which is rooted in a lot of psychoanalytic thought, because I don't think Sri Lanka offers that kind of training. I do that now. Right now, I am doing that program for 2 students. Anyone can find me through my website. That's 𝗺uniFernando.com. Quite easy to remember. So there is a page for this program, and they can contact me and we can set it up. That's the only thing that I teach at the moment.
Okay.
Because I think...
You're also studying at the moment, right?
Yes, I am. You're
doing a PhD?
No.
Masters?
My focus is on psychodynamic and psychotherapy
Therapy.
and psychoanalysis. That is my interest area. So I am enrolled in 2 schools, one in Chicago, one in New York, just going through continuous learning on that. So this is what I would like to teach people, because in Sri Lanka, I think we have enough certificate courses, diploma courses, and degrees in counseling. We have enough of that. We have a lot now. So what's missing, I felt, was some in-depth training in psychoanalysis or psychodynamic psychotherapy, which I feel is helpful for a counselor to know. And so that's what I do in the form of teaching. If anyone wants to consult me for counseling, again, my website has an appointment page. The calendar is there. Can be easily booked through that calendar. And my phone number is there, so they can always call me or WhatsApp. That's how I operate.
Awesome.
Yes.
How about if there's an emergency need for, kids or anyone who is having a lot of depression or anxiety or suicidal thoughts, and they can't necessarily wait but need sort of immediate help, who can they reach out for? I don't think people really know.
Yes, actually there is a hotline that is a government service that is being offered. I think Sri Lanka 𝗁𝗪𝗻 is also, they are very
Active.
reachable. So you can call them up. I myself don't take on emergency calls. It is not possible because the private practice is not set up to
For
take
that, yes.
emergency. Yes, so but there is a hotline.
Superb. Thank you. This has been incredibly enlightening.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for the invitation, Suresh.
And I had a lot
Lovely.
of fun with the interview as well. We spoke and touched on a lot of different topics and themes and areas. And like I said, I'm definitely calling you back. I have so many questions more.
Okay. Looking forward to it.
Thank you for your
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Yes, thank you.
Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and all the official pages on Insta, Facebook, and then, of course, the official YouTube channel as well. Appreciate all your support thus far, and all the likes and all the follows and all the subscriptions will obviously help us go a long way and to take this forward. Appreciate all the support. Cheers. We've got a lot of awesome pod interviews and episodes in store for you guys in 2026, baby.